Alright guys, welcome back, Resurgence here. Today we are discussing a subject that I haven't talked about in quite a while, and that would be an ongoing project that we need to make a little bit more progress on. So, of course, you guys can see here we have the underside of a Dodge Dart, and we have Mitsubishi on the left here and Subaru on the right. And well, today we will be discussing what kind of all-wheel drive system we are going to be putting into our vehicle of choice. Of course, it being the Dodge Dart. That is the one we are going with. So we have to find which components and which one will obviously win in this battle. And then I'll also mention the runners-up and possibly some other options, and also a few points on why they wouldn't work. So, of course, we will start out here. We got Mitsubishi. Grab the text, and we'll start out with our first point, and that will be, let's get the right size. No, don't want to go too big. You gotta fit all of our points in here. So we have Mitsubishi, and I have a list over here on the other screen. You guys can't really see it, but of course it's there for my reference, so that I can actually do this video properly and not screw it up, because I know I would inevitably do that if I didn't have all the information right in front of me. So we are starting with our first point. So the difference between a Mitsubishi and a Subaru all-wheel drive system. So the first point being that the Mitsubishi has a transverse-based all-wheel drive system. And of course, in some applications this may be good, and in others it may be not as good. Of course, it all depends on what we're going for in our project. Obviously it changes depending on the application. And then we got our our Subaru one. So for Subaru, we have a longitudinal based all-wheel drive. And of course, again, these are all dependent on what you're going for with your all-wheel drive system. And of course, so far I'm kind of liking the Subaru a little bit more, because it allows for more modification and that sort of thing, whereas a Mitsubishi, being transverse, you can't really do too much with it. And of course, we're going to talk about the other points here in a second, because I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Now, obviously I have to pick through my list of stuff, because I have a lot of points here. I can't put them all on the list. So of course we have the more complex drivetrain. And we're going to come over here, whereas Subaru's is quite simplistic. Now, I know this may not seem like a very coherent video. I'm trying to like do my best. I kind of suck at like multitasking, which is basically what I'm doing here. I'm trying to look at the screen while I'm talking to the viewers and typing stuff over here so that you guys can obviously read and hear and see everything that's going on. And so far, it appears that Subaru is winning the battle. And of course, before I even started to do this video, I had already thought about all of the outcomes and sort of stuff that I need to consider in order to actually build this monstrosity. That's what I'm calling it. It's definitely a monstrosity. An all-wheel drive Dodge Dart. What are you, crazy? It's like, whew, I gotta hype myself up again for all of the hassle that I'm gonna have to go through just trying to get all the pieces and parts together in order to actually start working on this, because there's so much work that has to be done. And of course, we are going to move on to our next point, and that would be, this is kind of for the future. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with the Dodge Dart after I install the all-wheel drive system. So, of course, there is the opportunity that I would have of making it rear-wheel drive or not. Of course, it all depends on what I want to do in the future, if I want to actually change it to rear-wheel drive or stick with the all-wheel drive. I know I'd probably prefer the all-wheel drive, but who knows? My tastes could change. I'm not guaranteeing anything just yet because we haven't even touched the car. I don't even have a Dodge Dart right now. We're just going through the process of determining parts and whatnot so that I get a better idea of what I need to do in the future. So, rear wheel drive, less common. And there we go. And of course, part of Subaru's drive system, it allows for a better working rear-wheel drive application. As a matter of fact, I know a friend who's actually taking a Subaru SVT and he's rear-wheel drive converting it. He's like welding the center diff and getting rid of the front axles, and you know, he's beefing up the rear end so that it can actually take all the power, and it's pretty cool stuff. And I may consider doing that with the Dodge Dart. Of course, that's not guaranteed or anything like that, but we will see what happens in the future. And of course, like I said earlier, after I'm done going through these two options, essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to talk about the runners-up or other possible options, because of course Subaru and Mitsubishi, they're not the only ones. There are plenty of options for all-wheel drive out there. It's just, this is what I came down to. These are the final two, and I didn't want to have like a list with 50 different all-wheel drive options on there, because that would just be absolutely insane. And it'd be hard fitting them on this little tiny screen. Okay, so we got our next option, or our next factor. So, so like I said earlier, the Mitsubishi is a bit less reliable. And And of course, if I spell anything wrong, I want everybody to comment how horrible my spelling is. More reliable. Now, on an unrelated note, I have a few things coming up on the channel other than, of course, the projects. Well, one of them is a part of the project, and actually they're all a part of projects already, so I don't know what I'm talking about. So as for the CT70, the supercharged CT70 deal, before we actually put the supercharger onto it, we're actually going to do a complete disc brake conversion, which is super uncommon, and it should be an interesting video if it isn't like my last two CT70 videos that I made, where I'm just sitting there on the ground and there's nothing going on. Like, I gotta make sure I edit the videos properly and get them up in a timely fashion, because I know I definitely didn't do that last time. And so we have, okay, so we got our next point. So we have ourselves the S all-wheel drive, and we have the Subaru. We have the Subaru symmetrical all-wheel drive. This is where I start spelling things wrong. There are two M's. Okay. So these are the two different types of all-wheel drive systems. So obviously they operate slightly differently from each other. It depends on which it depends on which models you get, because the all-wheel drive systems can act a little bit differently from model to model. Like an Evo 8 versus an Evo 4, they're not going to have exactly the same all-wheel drive system. I know I'm kind of just eyeballing it or shooting into the dark right now, but hopefully I get this information correct. I haven't done all the research, but I know generally that's the idea behind the S all-wheel drive system, at least in the Mitsubishi. I know Subaru's a little bit more consistent because there is a symmetrical, which means it sends 50% of the power to the front wheels and 50% to the rear wheels, which means it's 100% an all-wheel drive system, and there's nothing that's stopping that, unlike the S all-wheel drive system in the Mitsubishi Evos, which I've heard and read on some forums that they actually they act more on a front-wheel drive based system, and that does come back to the transverse versus the longitudinal. It does make a difference in the long run. I don't know if it's a big difference, but you know, whatever. So that is that, and let's see what else we got. I mean, yeah, so we did the ones from Mitsubishi and Subaru. So right now we could actually, let me grab a brush. So we are going to choose ourselves the Subaru, and we're going to chop the Mitsubishi, because Subaru is honestly better. Of course, I own a Subaru right now. I honestly think the system would probably end up being better in the long run than a Mitsubishi, with all of its more complex drivetrain systems and whatnot. It would end up being too much of a hassle. So Subaru it is. And of course we have to do our runners up. So let's look over here. I just got a couple here. Actually, I have 3, but it's no big deal. So we have a Honda all-wheel drive system, and of course that acts as a transverse. So it's similar to the Mitsubishi. That's why I'm putting it over on the side with Mitsubishi. And there's one big factor into why I would not choose the Honda all-wheel drive, and that is it's extremely expensive. Like if I went Subaru, you could buy the entire drivetrain for like $8,000 plus shipping, and the Honda, you try to get an all-wheel drive center differential, that can get very expensive very fast if you're trying to get a good high quality one with all the bells and whistles, But that's essentially why I would not choose the Honda all-wheel drive. So, and also only used in race applications, or generally speaking. I know I've been keeping up with Boosted Boys. They're a YouTube channel. They do a lot of like race cars and stuff. They get a 7-second MR2, and they have a few Civics. They have a CRX. They do a bunch of crazy stuff. Obviously, the cars are really fast, but yes, they do like have the all-wheel drive from Honda and stuff. So, yep, I know and experience the fact that all of that would end up not being applicable in our situation. So, yeah. And then, of course, if I ever desired it, there are no rear-wheel drive applications for this. Alright, so that's the Honda one, and we got to move on to our second to last. So I kind of have to leave a little bit of space here, or I could put it right there. So we have, now this is a crazy one, and you'll see in a second why I'm not going to do this one for sure. But of course I had to put it on there because there are some people that would be like, oh, why don't you do an even more crazy swap since you're already doing something absolutely insane? Like, alright, just add it to the list because why not? So, in this case, the transmission is located at the rear of the car, which is extremely unusual, and let's not screw up words. So we have the transmission at the rear of the car, which obviously that's extremely unique. Only the GTR, it's like the only car in the entire world where the transmission sits in the back and the engine sits in the front. Completely crazy, but essentially the way it works is you have electronic controls. I don't even know how to explain it, but you have electronic controls signaling between the engine and the transmission, which are separated, and it has like a hookup with a plate. I'm really bad at explaining things, but yeah, it's quite an interesting setup that we're not going to do. And of course, the real reason why we're not going to use a GTR all-wheel drive system is because it does not come in a manual. And of course, we're trying to do a 6-speed manual all-wheel drive system, in this application. And again, very expensive. And as a matter of fact, I don't even know if I could hook a Dodge Dart engine up to the GTR's transmission system. It would get kind of crazy if I had to, and I would definitely need a lot of help in that case. The one advantage of having the GTR all-wheel drive system, it can handle impossible amounts of horsepower. Now, of course, I'm not trying to do anything I'm not trying to do anything crazy with the all-wheel drive Dodge Dart 6-speed manual turbo build thingy. I just kind of want to build a car that also kind of reminds me of another YouTube channel, Bad Obsession Motorsports, where they decided to put a Toyota Celica all-wheel drive system into a Mini Cooper. And of course, I'll link all of these channels in my description. These guys are absolutely crazy, insane, and amazing. Of course, that's what I think about like most car channels, because they actually support something that I like. And it's time to move on to the final option. The option which I really didn't know would work out or not. It's still up in the air. If I actually decide to do this, it would be because I want to stick with the brand. Of course, that brand being FCA or Stellantis or whatever you want to call it. Or, yeah. So, we have specifically a Dodge Dart all-wheel drive. Now, some things might get a little squirrely with this one because I don't have all of the data. Of course, this would be completely unique to this specific car. No other one. It would be a one-of-one Dodge Dart all-wheel drive. So, gotta make a little bit more room. And essentially the way it would work, we keep the Dodge Dart. We keep the Dodge Dart 6-speed. And so we start with the Dodge Dart 6-speed manual. And then the next thing we do, now there are two things we could do with this. We could do a transverse mounted all-wheel drive system, or we could do the strange thing and we could turn the engine and transmission 90 degrees and then try to build like a front axle with a differential and then do the same thing with the rear, although that would be extremely difficult, and it would be a lot easier to just do a sort of Mitsubishi type deal where you have just transverse and then you send the power to the rear wheels. Of course, you can still build a rear wheel drive application out of it, although again, it would be a one-of-one. It would be the only Dodge Dart that would have an all-wheel drive based rear wheel drive system. And I feel like I'm rambling, so I'm just going to continue on to the final point. So that would be, we cannot use the Jeep Renegade rear axle setup. And that is because they have a really bad clutch system that breaks all the time in it. And that would be the main all-wheel drive deal. So basically, you would need to have the transverse all-wheel drive, and then what is it? You need the PCU, you could probably take that and modify it to hook. You could probably take that from a Jeep Renegade and you could hook it up to a Dodge Dart 6-speed manual transmission. I know nobody's done it before, but I'm sure there's a workaround or something you could do to pair them together so that you can make it work. Again, I'm just spitballing here. I have no idea if that would actually be possible. So that leaves the final one. You need a custom or other brand rear end. Or you could just take a, yeah, I was thinking about, you could just take a rear end from like a Chrysler 200. I know they did build all-wheel drive applications of that, so that could be possible, but you'd have to make sure that the the final drive ratios were the same between the transmission and the rear end. Otherwise, there could be issues. So the other brand rear end, or just get a custom differential or whatever and put it inside the rear end. But that is about it. So we do have our multiple options. We of course chose the Subaru one as the all-wheel drive. We denied the Mitsubishi because it's got a fair few more issues than the Subaru. And then we also took a look at the other possible 3 options, and we decided we weren't going to choose any of those because of the issues that would arise in the future. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you guys around next time. I know this was a very long video, 27 minutes for me choosing Subaru for the all-wheel drive system, but inevitably that had to happen. I'm sorry that it took so long, but I will see you guys next time, and probably either a Subaru or a CT70 video. Yeah. And thank you guys for watching again. Goodbye.